You are probably a pretty bad manager of people in your business. I know that because I know you did not get into e-commerce to manage people or because you have some great management background. That's your core skill. You got into e-commerce because you love products and you love e-commerce and you love marketing and growth. And maybe you even have some financial sophistication. That's my take on the industry. It has been for a little while. And that is a really big problem in the age of AI and in the age of offshoring as an opportunity in your business. That insight was actually first given to me, or really sort of solidified for me, by my friend on this podcast, Gregg Carey. Gregg is going to be on the show in a minute. Gregg runs More Staffing, a staffing agency that you have heard me talk about countless times on this podcast now, that connects you with incredible talent in the Philippines. But what Gregg is doing at More Staffing is really fascinating because he's run an e-commerce business himself for a while. He has seen the challenges of integrating incredible offshore talent, no matter how good the talent is, and only seen those challenges get more difficult as you also try to integrate AI into your process. But it's a really important thing because if you're going to take advantage of the margin opportunity in e-commerce right now, which I just recorded an episode about and released a couple days before this one is launching, you need to be able to leverage resources towards the outcomes that you are trying to produce in your business while maintaining lean OpEx, while maintaining high profit, while maintaining an efficient and functional team. It's the kind of stuff and more that we're going to talk about on this episode with Gregg. Gregg is on the show today. This is technically a sponsored episode, but I hope you know that as with anything like this, Gregg is a trusted friend and colleague in the space who I'm glad to have on the show either way. You're going to like this, talking about how you get the most out of offshoring. What do you do about things like cultural disconnects, about workflows, about processes, and how do you integrate AI into all of those things in a way that makes sense so you can actually take advantage of the opportunity. Let's get into it with Gregg Carey, the CEO of More Staffing, right now.
Good job, man. That's just smooth. Did you have a monitor? Are you like reading the monitor? Are you like Ryan Seacrest with like a monitor just coming in?
No,
dude.
I one shot.
I was just gonna say, man.
One shot.
You're like the Jeff Probst of e-commerce podcasts.
Oh, I don't even know what I should say. Is that guy just a machine? Great. So if you guys maybe don't know this. Somebody out there immediately is seeing you and knows exactly who you are, Gregg. But Gregg Carey here. I always talk about how you run More Staffing and you've run an e-commerce brand for a long time in the licensed apparel kind of world. But of course, maybe the most important relevant fact of your whole life, Gregg, the key thing about you, is that you were on Survivor.
Yeah.
So you know about
20 years ago.
Yeah. And you made it really far.
It was 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
20 years ago now. I was a kid. Oh, man. It was, but Jeff Probst, he's a machine, right? He's one-shot machine. He does not, he's just perfection, the ad-lib and everything. And so he takes it seriously. And I don't know, I hear that intro. I'm just like, geez,
I'm sure.
And then you just turn the energy on. You turn the energy on, like the camera's rolling, the energy's on. Behind the scenes,
I try.
We're having a normal chat, but those cameras start rolling, electrified.
I have recorded like hundreds of these. So hopefully I'm better at it than I used to be. I do still have some tics that bug me. I talk way too fast still. I cannot solve that. I still have lots of filler words, that kind of stuff. People who can solve all of those things and can really get it down. It just must take endless reps, like just hours and hours and hours. Because I've done a lot of reps at this point, and I also have before this, I've stood on a lot of stages and talked, and I still can't solve some of those things. Like it just feels really difficult.
I mean, some of the stuff you can't solve who you are. Really, it's more about leaning into who you are. I know for me when I was on Survivor, speaking of fast talker. I was in the jungle recording these, confessionals or whatever, and the producers were always, gesturing my hand like, yeah, come on, because I'm like a slow talker, right? I'm a slow talker, and they're like, come on, we only have 44 minutes for this episode. You gotta make your point. So put it on.
So funny.
Put it on 1.5 speed, everyone.
Yeah.
For me,
I know one guy who listens to me on 3x.
Wow.
I recorded a podcast and he sent it, and I sent it to him before it released because he asked me for it. It was actually it was an episode of me and Taylor, and Taylor also talks really fast, and we both get each other going and the energy is going, and he's like, hey, can you send me that episode? I sent it to him, and 20 minutes later, it was an hour and a half episode, and 20, 30 minutes later, whatever it was, he emailed me. He's like, oh, it's great. Here's what I thought. And I was like, what? What? Yeah, I listened to you on 3x. I was like, that is that guy is insanity. I mean, yeah.
That's that's tough.
You were, what were you, 4th place?
I was 6th place, but I lasted
Sixth place.
33 days out of 39. I thought I was going to win. I didn't. I lost 30
Yep.
pounds. You lose 30 pounds. You look at yourself in the mirror after not looking at yourself in the mirror for over a month.
In 33
days. And you look at yourself in the mirror and it's like, you're like, that's so familiar. What is it? And you're like, oh, that's me when I was 14. You know, you're like strip 30 pounds. You're like, I've seen that body before. 30 years. Well,
wait, I have a question about that. This is so beside the point, but this is you said we'll talk life at the end. We're going to move it up a little. Was there anything about the experience of not seeing yourself in the mirror specifically that you noticed? They maybe not have been, but like that could have been. It strikes me as something that could be an interesting and powerful experience, or it could just be what life was like.
It's you don't like, you're not like missing it or anything. You're not noticing it as like something that's not part of your life. You actually get into like a comfort level where we had an opportunity to like take a shower, right? 3 weeks into it. And you take a shower, then all of a sudden you're like conscious about trying to stay clean. But once you wipe yourself of that kind of need to stay clean, right? So the shower is almost like this mental disruption. It's like, I feel like I got to stay clean. But the mirror is not a conscious kind of thing. But then when you're done and you get voted off and you've not seen your face and your body for over a month, you realize how and change happens during that time. Everyone will just spend time in the mirror, just like staring at your face and just being like, I'm so thin. And your body, it's this strange thing where it's such a stark difference from the last time you looked, and it's familiar. And then you have this like epiphany where you're like, oh, it's familiar because this is what I used to look like 10 years ago, And so it's, it's wild, man. And there's so many kind of, business related things, and you're always kind of overlapping one learning of the part of your life to another, but there's this especially pronounced experience on the island where there's a spectrum of it's a spectrum of confidence. And on one side is paranoia, and on the other side is, cockiness. And as you navigate your relationships in the island, if you get paranoid, no one's going to want to join you, right? No, I'm not. That guy's a liability, and so you're seen as a liability by others, right? Whereas if you get cocky, you're ignoring your own liability to yourself. But so they're both signals. They're both signals where you kind of have to, and so you want to kind of stay in this confidence line, but you get cues from both sides, both little voices in your ear. And as I was approaching like the end of my time, not knowing it, I started to have this spidey sense of like, something feels off. But my cockiness was like, no, I'm good. But my paranoia was saying, hey, listen to this. And you don't want to listen to it too much and open up this vulnerability. And I was in a confessional and I was like, they kept asking me questions. And I finally leaned in. I go, you want to know the truth? I can't sleep at night because I'm thinking about how I'm going to spend this $1 million. I got voted off 4 hours later. Like,
I assume that line made it onto the show.
It didn't, but I spent like 4 months thinking it would, and then like being like, "Oh my god!"
It didn't.
Thankfully, it didn't fit within like the narrative that they had been developing.
Wow.
Just there's so many kind of things about that. It was a wild experience, and they're in season 50 now, which is unreal,
crazy. Well, we'll have to do a separate Survivor bonus episode. I just can ask you about that experience because it seems like a truly fascinating life experience.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And then the final thing I'll say is you have this incredible experience, and one of the most rewarding parts is like, yes, this experience in itself was incredible, but for an experience to live beyond that the time box of the experience was kind of extended because it's shown to the world, right? I mean, this was before streaming. There's 30 million people a week watching it, and so all your friends and family get to develop like extreme interest in your experience. So then your experience not becomes this personal journey that you want to talk about, but no one gives a shit. It kind of your ability to what is it? 20 years later, I found a way to like inject it into this conversation, right? It's like that's
right. I'm sure
that's like an incredible part of the experience is that it just there was your journey got broadcast, and so it makes it relevant for others. So anyway, that was fun.
Really interesting. All right, so let's talk about the thing that I want to talk about first. Your insight when we talked about this recently was that basically, in so many words, I'm going to repeat back to you how I think of the way you said it to me, that management is actually very difficult and integrating team members is really difficult. Everybody's seen the little like image where you add lines of communication for every team member you have, and it gets like really, really crazy, really fast. Basically, as soon as you add more team members, like there's just a million lines of communication. I've really experienced this. I don't think I'm a particularly good leader or manager in an organization because there's a detail orientation and a process orientation that's extremely hard for me for like great leadership. I think I'm not trying to be hard on myself. Like I think there's ways in which I do fine as a leader, but I am not process oriented, and I have definitely experienced a thing where integrating team members and processes is really hard for me. And you, from the position of running a staffing agency, like a lot of your financial success is dependent on not just placing a hire with a company, but on them having a good enough experience that like you get LTV off that, right? Like it's just like an e-commerce brand, right? It's just like if that goes well, then somebody's much more likely to say, "Oh, I'm going to do that again." You know, so that's the experience I've had with more staffing for a long time. I've come back to more and hired a bunch, and probably will for a long time still, right? But I'm curious, sort of like what you see. Sort of maybe start wherever you want and answer this question. But what you see as you see team members integrated into sort of clients' teams, and then of course you also built an e-commerce team with a bunch of team members from the Philippines, and so you've experienced this in a lot of different ways. So anyway, I'm curious just sort of how that all hits you, and what do you think?
I think it's so we started more staffing like 5 years ago to replicate the solution that we that was born out of our own e-commerce experience, right? And it's like, oh, small budget at the beginning. Oh wow, we can find talent. It's cheap labor, but then you realize, oh no, this is like incredible competency, incredible talent. So it was to solve a real problem, and we were coming in as e-commerce operators, right? And then through kind of running a staffing agency, it's like everyone and their brother just started popping up staffing agencies. If you hit one of those sites and you're inundated on Meta with another staffing agency, $5 an hour and this and that, and anytime, and it was with e-commerce, anytime like a barrier of entry is reduced, and we could talk about how that relates to like AI, how it relates to like e-commerce, it attracts like riffraff. And I just had like a pit in my stomach, being like, oh man, do I have my guy that's running a staffing agency? And so I had to like level it up, and I'll get to the answer about management a bit, but we had to level it up and be like, listen, a staffing agency is, give me a job description, I'll give you a person, good luck, good luck. But what we're really about, and always have been, is providing operational leverage, right? And you can deliver operational leverage through a suite of kind of pillars or services. And so one is like installing talent, right? And there's things that you do with that talent because it's a human being, about how you can kind of manage their growth and educate them and coach them and provide some type of community for them, right? But then there's workflows, right? Workflows like SOPs, but I'm not just talking about like a task list of what needs to get done. I'm talking about embedding kind of the decision criteria, the escalation points, the KPI triggering events that say, if this happens, do this, right? And so you couple those two together, And what happens is you bring down the management burden. You bring down the management burden, and the impact of what they can do goes up, because if you don't have that management competency already kind of baked into your organization, and a lot of e-commerce companies, a great brand or great product or ads people, they leverage those 2 points to kind of grow their business, and so they're not equipped to like build a team and provide all these ops. And so you put a person in that seat, and now what you've actually done is you've created management burden and overhead. Now you're managing someone because you don't really know how to manage it, and just go figure it out. They're like, figure what out, right? And so you have those two things, like the talent and the workflow. That's a multiplier. And where we are today is that we're on the wave of a enormous compounding effect of agents, right? And it's
Yep.
with the two of those, you need the insight of the workflows, right? Because I've seen, one person with AI and another person with AI. One has wisdom and the other one doesn't. Like, they're going to go down two different paths.
Yep. 100%.
And so you leverage, the talent and the workflow to inform the agent. And now the talent is a 5x talent with the agent, right? And then I think there's another component where, because of all the efficiencies that you gain in, with just all the, AI API access and building dashboards and rules and leverage, it's easier to provide some type of fractional leadership oversight, so that you're baking wisdom into the system. And you talk about the collective balance sheet of the intelligence, and the majority of all that has been on how do you play the metagame, what's contribution margin, right? That's where that's where the heavy amount is. And I think there's this other line item, which is just like, the ops. And that's where, that's where you can provide management freedom, time to actually access those bigger levers that drive the growth, drive the contribution margin. But if you're constantly being pulled down by the gravitational pull of just people in seats, you're just going to be on that treadmill, and you're like, the important stuff always, doesn't get the attention that it needs. So that's kind of what we've seen. To be super long-winded in addressing your answer is,
no, it's very helpful. Yeah.
But we see, we see so many people coming in, and we know our success is determined long-term by like delivering like value, that in the form of someone that's excellent. And so if we can mitigate all these things and wrap them with the buffers that create bad outcomes, and we see it, a lot of people just come in, they're like, I need someone to kind of do this, kind of do that, It's not that they don't even necessarily know; they just haven't had time to they feel the pain, but the pain hasn't kind of given them the time to like really nail down what they need, right? So if we can take the collective balance sheet of all the ops knowledge and build those workflows and playbooks and like emerging AI agents to make sure that everyone's ops is super buttoned up, so that they can maximize their time. Anyway, what was that, like 12 minutes long?
That's a classic. No, it's great. That's a classic hiring problem that people talk about too. The idea like you sort of come in trying to hire somebody because you feel overloaded, not because you're actually it's like a negative reason to hire somebody, as opposed to like the positive, like I have a thing I want to have happen in my business, and so I'm going to build team I need team to accomplish that outcome, and here's the way it's going to create value in the business. And so people go hire for the bad reason of like, I just have too much to do, versus here's the thing I'm going to do next. Because if it's true that work is an air, or what did I say? Work is a liquid, solid, gas. Work is gas. Goodness gracious. Work is a gas. See, I'm really good at this. Like we talked about hundreds of episodes in. Work is a gas that fills the space that you allot to it, right? That idea. So it will always kind of feel like you're overburdened. So then the question is like, how do you actually think proactively about what you're trying to accomplish, and what's the best way to do that? And I think it's also something that you from the first time we talked basically had sort of drilled into my head and into others, and that you've always been really intent on, which is like, if you were thinking about the opportunity in the Philippines as like $5 an hour virtual assistant kind of talent, and really any offshoring, there's probably some usefulness to that kind of thing. It's not that there's no place for for finding entry level work that can happen for people, but it's just missing out on what the real opportunity is, which is actually going and getting really good people, A player type talent, and integrating them and actually using the market advantage you have to go hire at the top of another market just because your dollars go further, top of the market relative to whatever position you're hiring, and then going and attracting better talent because of that, because it just works that way. And if you can think proactively in that direction, that's certainly the way we've approached you guys. And so if that's the way you can approach the whole issue and the whole problem or whatever, then you end up with this much better opportunity to do this. But then there's this question of sort of like, how do you actually then set those people up for success? Now, by getting better people, you can paper over this to some degree, right? It's like you have people who are better contributors and just therefore create value just in general. But it's sort of not the only part of it. And again, this all gets sort of heightened by now adding like being an agent manager, which is, I think, basically where this is going, and where it is, not just where it's going, where it is, as part of the challenge. So yeah, I don't know. I just think of you guys as like having an interesting relationship to the problem of management and of team building, because it's not just offshore because it's cheaper,
Oh yeah. I mean, that always, you get what you also see is like, all right, I got this budget and I want them to do, a little graphic design. I want them to do a little, creative strategy, a little bookkeeping, and I want to pay $6 an hour, right? And it's like, it just doesn't, work that way, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
The unlock of
so you talked about, you referenced it of workflows. Are there ways in which you guys are not only just bringing the hire, but sort of like helping first analyze the workflows of the companies that you're coming with? So like, let's say we called you up fresh. I had never talked to you before. I didn't know what I was looking for, whatever. Would you come in and sort of look at our operational structure and like try to implement workflows with us and bring people in? Like, do you go to that level of the service at this point, or is it not there yet? Like, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, it depends on the company, right? I mean, some people have, workflows. Some people just put people in the job and kind of give a job description, and everyone's feeling their way around. And then there's inevitably some type of like gap between like what the talent is expecting and what the boss is expecting. And so what we'll do now is we weren't kind of happy with just just a job description, right? Because we knew that to make someone as productive as possible, there's really an opportunity to just choreograph like that, the first few weeks of onboarding, and to really choreograph the workflow. And we try to come at that workflow from a first principles, like 80-20 type vibe, because you can get something pretty detailed, right? But like, let's focus on the core. What are those things that like get the job done, the lion's share of the job? And it's usually that process is like starting it from a clean slate rather than trying to audit what they're currently doing. It's like, let's have a conversation and let's like prepare something that almost resets your thinking, right? So there's a deliverable of an SOP, and then that SOP will sometimes be attached with a dashboard for that role. And so we're pulling in KPIs. So for like a merchandising role, for example, we'll pull in KPIs around conversion rate, around like the positioning of products within a collection page and the conversion rate of products in the collection page, product page conversion rate, all stuff that kind of feed a merchandiser's kind of tactics. And you don't, rather than it just being a dashboard of KPIs and, all right, conversion rate should be this, where they'll kind of just use that now and look at it on a daily basis and say, okay, when the conversion rate drops below 15%, here's the things that you look at to first, like hygiene, like make sure nothing's like broken. Go through like, check them, make sure it's not working, make sure it's working, make sure the site's not there, right? You can do that in like 10 minutes. But then there's other things, okay, like if you find something and you realize, oh, there's the best sellers like halfway down on the page, right? Let's move that up. And so the key with the real unlock to that, what I've found from AI, is that you're able to take kind of a workflow, which used to be like in Notion, and bring an interpretation with an API to a dashboard for that particular role. that drives decision escalations, like event triggers, and that helps to kind of facilitate the role. But then it also allows for the creation of a status report at the end of the week, so that the executive can just be like, okay, here's what happened. Other than, when you don't have that, it's just often very loosey goosey, and even a dashboard alone, the data alone just doesn't really tell what's behind it. And you don't want to be like directing every test, right? So that's one example.
No, of course not. Yeah, that's the whole point of getting good people. Are you guys building that dashboard for people?
Yeah. It's
really, really cool.
Yep. And it's like a one-off, just using Cloud Code, building a dashboard, getting the API connections, and customizing it to their business. And so it's that's what you can do now.
So that when the person comes in to the business, you're sort of building the dashboard tool setup to hand to the executive to say, I can help you evaluate how this person is doing and help you set them up for success, and not just evaluate them, but set them up for success and evaluate them and actually set them up to succeed. Like sort of like a custom AI integration alongside the person.
Yeah. And it requires an input from the executive, right? Because all the triggers are based on KPI thresholds. And those are unique to their particular business, past, present,
every
right?
business. Yeah.
And so you're bringing those in and making them go through the process. Like, when is there a warning sign? When do you want to know when like a conversion rate drops, or when a stock out, anything like, and what do there's clear recommendations and mitigations that happen out of this, but kind of mapping that to a dashboard, I think, is the unlock.
Because otherwise, people are basically just making these decisions based on vibes and like general health, and like you said, loosey goosey.
Yeah, I mean, you're trusting that you're hiring someone with competency, right? So someone good at their job, and to be honest, after a while, that dashboard kind of just becomes a validation checkpoint, right? But you're just connecting the behavior. And someone's, an excellent talent is going to do that. But then when you have that, I mean, one other leverage point here is that when you have that detailed workflow and KPIs and escalations, you can actually, if needed, you can actually hire someone who's less experienced, but incredibly smart and scrappy. And now you're giving them an explicit playbook. Because one thing that I've learned is that the world's changing so fast, and someone that has 10 years experience is sometimes a burden to the new tools that are required today.
Yeah. It's so interesting because, and this is something I think about with hiring and some of that stuff right now, is like, it's such a different skill set. Like the experience can be a burden, but can also make somebody so effective because now you just give them such better tools. Like I was listening to, I think the AI Daily Brief, which is a podcast that I don't listen to all the time, but Patrick, my business partner, talks about, listens to a lot and really helpful on some of this stuff. And he has an episode about sort of like the skill set in AI now and into the future here. And he basically says like, there's these two skills that become extremely valuable. One of them is sort of like agentic management. And then the other one is domain expertise. And of course, the best people will actually combine both. But those are the two things that are really, really extremely valuable, is if you can do those two things. And it's so much of this is comes down to that. What I hear a little bit in what you're saying is sort of like, you have domain expertise in the realm at this point of hiring and onboarding in the Philippines. Like, you've done this a lot. You've done this for a while. You've built business with it. You found great people. You've done this. And so you've seen where the breakdown happens enough times. And so now it's like, okay, you are trying to use that. And then I'm sure, leverage tools to make that process better and smoother and all that stuff, to where you can, speed that up for your clients, getting them better talent, etc. And then at the same time, then take that same thing, which is like, there's domain expertise in the world of e-commerce, which is like, how do e-commerce teams work, which is another area you have a bunch of domain expertise. So it's like, okay, now you also know how that stuff works in the actual integration of the e-commerce business. So how do I, what are the problems that are going to come up? What are the challenges? You just referenced one of them, which is sort of the loosey-goosey setup for success and evaluation. Okay, so now how do we use the tools to build these things? So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to play out, specifically in the realm of hiring, specifically in the realm of e-commerce, because now everything is so customizable that these particular domain expertises, just hiring offshored in the Philippines for e-commerce, now becomes this unique space where you have this outsized opportunity to impact sort of how brands are set up for success.
Yeah, I mean, I think the domain e-commerce expertise is really kind of the connective tissue, right? And I always say that it's hard out there. It's hard, right? And some companies have huge advantages, but if you're just a run-of-the-mill, successful, not breakout story e-commerce company, you don't just manufacture product. You have to manufacture profit, right. And manufacturing profit is understanding 50 tweaks within your, from your top line to your bottom line, whether it's in your COGS or all around your OpEx. Obviously, the COGS have more leverage, but it's a commitment to two tweaks and building process that has such discipline. And so all of this is in an effort to drive more profit, and it's the little things that we can even pass on in those workflows, which are our own learnings of we were just, we had to we have to just do a lot to scrape by a profit. We had to, nothing was given to us. So
it's part of why I'm so hot on this, why I've liked working with you guys for so long, and why I so gladly endorse the concept is that I just think the margin opportunity, part of my baseline belief is still that the great advantage of e-commerce, the thing that makes it a valuable business model, is OpEx, essentially. It's that you have the ability to scale revenue against a low OpEx. That's sort of the thing that makes the margin opportunity interesting. And if you compare this to something like OpEx, and probably product gross margin is another one potentially. If you think about e-com relative to retail, it's if you, even for owned retail, you have storefronts to manage and people to pay in those storefronts, and all this stuff. It becomes a lot harder to turn a profit. Or if you've got a third party retailer, then it's you've got you take a big gross margin cut off of that, and so now you cut your margin in half, and so it because they have to get their margin as well, and that becomes a big challenge. So there are these things, but the great thing about D2C theoretically is that you can run a very low OpEx as a percentage of revenue, and you can run very high gross margins at the same time. The challenge is CAC, and the challenge sometimes is shipping freight to customer. Those are the big things that make it really hard. Freight to customer eats into your margin a fair amount, especially for some brands. And then CAC ends up being this really big problem as well. It's just acquiring customers, which the storefront solves in a way that is harder on Meta. So if you think about that, then how do you play into and lean into the advantages and make it so that an e-commerce business makes sense? The answer to me, among other things, is to press those margin areas harder. Is to say okay, well, for OpEx, if I can already run, a $10 million business at 15% OpEx, what if I can run it at 10% OpEx? What if I can run it at 7% OpEx or something like that? And so this is why for a long time the offshoring opportunities made so much sense to me. It is wait a minute, I live in California. It's going to cost me all the money to hire people here. That's before California state employment tax, which is
exactly.
Too, right? And to say nothing of state income tax, which is also another big problem, right? So I have the deck stacked against me in all of those ways. But if I can go higher now in the Philippines, where just my dollars go a lot further, it's just sort of obvious to me that if I can find even roughly equivalent talent levels, then it's such a massive OpEx advantage. I don't know why brands don't automatically go and do that. And then when you add this AI component to where it's wait, now actually each person gets a more powerful hammer in their work, and maybe a drastically more powerful hammer to swing when they work, It's now you are talking about this really, really, really big thing to where you actually don't have to affect the other things that much at all. And you can still end up with this. And now you can add a whole bunch of bottom line margin to your business by doing this stuff well. The question is can you actually get yourself set up for success to utilize those two things? And so like the way you are talking about this got me really excited about this idea, because you're going, oh, it's not as easy as it sounds to do those things, to add AI and offshoring, right? So we will now step in and say, we will be the people who connect you to the talent and also get them to be successful, because that is actually a monster business opportunity and will continue to be going forward.
Yeah. I think the reason to do it when you're like the operational benefits of an e-commerce company scaling is that leverage that you get over time, which makes it more important when you're sub 10 million, sub 5 million to solve it now. Solve it right, because solving it now and right, one, gives you the availability within your CAC and freight, especially with your CAC, to kind of get that engine working, right? So if you're extremely, just kind of resourceful with your OpEx in the early days, you give more window to compete for CAC. That's huge. It's a compounding benefit over time. And then as you start to unlock different levels of growth, you've just built the habits that will serve you well. They'll just be ingrained. There'll be habits that will serve you well on that growth path. And a great exercise, which you said, and everyone should do. And it's, people talk about, the inverse of this sometimes, like, what would we have to do to grow 100% this year instead of 50%? If you're doing 15%, net income, like, ask that question: what would it take to do 7%? And we reduced our labor expense over an 18-month period by 80%, and we didn't skip a beat.
Yeah.
And I was playing, a game that I thought I had to play that I did not need to play. Part of which is the intellectual capital and the learnings that get infused. And so if you're putting all those in to your business, you can unlock the playbook. Assuming you got a great product sits above everything. But if you have a great product, then it's a playbook.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Did I miss anything on that? What else? Anything else you're seeing that you feel like is helpful for people to hear about, sort of as you're watching this from the perspective of somebody staffing brands? There's stuff that they're missing, the common mistakes, any of those kinds of things that are sort of top of mind for you as you look at this?
I think on the contribution margin side of things, I think thinking about velocity of product as it relates to contribution margin, and pairing purchase orders to an investor rate of return. And so you're actually looking at the economics of your business, and it's a framework change where the product just becomes a tool, a financial mechanism. And so every purchase order is how quickly is it going to return money? That's the only thing to address. And there's real easy ways to kind of build in just kind of checkpoints of like, okay, here's my purchase order. Calculate the IRR of this based on historical data, stuff like that.
I am amazed at people's willingness to spend. It would be really great to keep building more stuff into dashboards and things like that accomplishes for brands, because there's so much money being spent at negative IRRs in or at the very least at sub public market IRRs.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because like, listen, if you are not getting more than 8% per year, in return on your investment, you should save yourself a whole bunch of headaches and go put that money into the S&P. Like and there's just so much money spent at a negative IRR that's like really crazy. Now, it can be hard to calculate when some of these things create longer term value in a business, and I understand all that. But beginning to sort of challenge yourself in that notion, I think, is a really useful exercise for operators. It's to begin to just say, like, how strong and how clear is my case that this is a really positive IRR, and how positive is it? Like, what
you need to know what it is
that doing, and even and we've built this into some dashboards. Like, I've built sort of a sloppy return on invested capital at times for advertisers that I sort of reference with ad spend, where I'm calculating the ad spend and the inventory costs together and thinking about that as like, what is my return on the combination of those two things? It's actually hard to get the timing exactly right, like, because there's a weird timing thing where you pay 30% for your product up front or whatever, and then 70% on delivery, or maybe you have net 60, all of those things complicate the calculation, but you can at least get a directional sense and begin to compare different efforts in your business by thinking this way. I think it's a really useful thing. I actually have never mind. I don't have that as a freely available tool. I have an internal tool that like allows me to look at that, but I've not. I would gladly share.
By the end of this call, I will have a freely available tool.
No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to. I'm not going to promise that.
No. I'm saying I'll just take the prompt of what you described, and by the it'll build, right?
Great. I mean, you should. You should. Yeah, that'll be a good lead magnet. For
another like tidbit of things that I've experienced in C's where I think there's gaps. One, I think there's a whole lot of brands out there that do not know how to read a balance sheet, and they do not know what they do not know the hamster wheel that they're on. There's a reality that the balance sheet will just give you the answer. You may optimistically feel like, oh, we're out of this, and the balance sheet may actually just if you really know how to read that balance sheet, you'll be able to just look at it and be like, those things are disconnected. Your optimism of where you want to go,
they're not going to work.
It can't. And until you experience the math of that, it's really hard to see. But then it becomes.
Are you thinking about like loans in particular?
Yeah. A lot of the right. I mean, a lot of the. I mean, I know we had like a SBA loan from the economic injury that was a very seductive, cheap loan. I know all of these MCAs. It's just too low hanging fruit, and then the math on it just becomes if you have $500,000 in the SBA, you're gonna make $800,000, $900,000 to probably $1 million to actually pay that off, right? If you're so the math just makes it incredibly hard. Not to mention the consistent cash pulling out of the business. So you really need to like understand what that balance sheet looks like and the constraints that it provides on the business, and it's kind of tangentially related to that is I see a lot of companies doing the bookkeeping with an awareness of the income statement, but really not knowing how to like reconcile inventory on like a monthly basis to truly understand your COGS like that. And it's not an easy process. And it's a blind spot that can have a big swing on what the actual profit is. And until you do that, you don't really know, because especially at those sizes of people that are using bookkeeping businesses, they don't have an ERP that can give the granular COGS data, right? And so, one, that their Shopify data is probably like, off by a fair amount, and then the reconcile of like what inventory is actually in stock and what has been sold. I mean, you can see 10 to 20% swings there, which can totally change. Oh, we're 10% profit to like, oh, we're actually slowly bleeding money, right?
I had a brand that we made all of our targets based off of a margin profile that was about 5 percentage points wrong in the bad direction. So it was like our margin was 5 percentage points, not 5%, 5 percentage points worse than we thought. And the difference between that was a year of like squeaking out profit versus like getting towards 10% and growing, which is a reasonable year. I mean, it's a huge gap. It wasn't the only problem in the business at the time, but it's a really, really big impact on your business, when there's not, just because those 5 points are straight to the bottom line. And it's like not having that. Or do you guys, again, do you guys do anything? Do you have tools or something that help people with this?
With
that kind of financial level bookkeeping thinking, or is that I'm curious if there's a particular reason for that. That's broader ecom advice that you've seen.
Bookkeeping doesn't. There's things like bookkeeping and like video editing where like kind of the job it's like reconcile the books, know that right from a bookkeeping perspective, right? So that role, but then you need to like level up the bookkeeping and provide some type of like controller type influence to it. And so for those particular roles, we've not implemented like an SOP yet for it. We've kind of been building out as like the needs kind of develop. But man, I'd love to just talk to folks and just share the pain that I've felt personally on like
right.
And it literally just just make sure you reconcile your inventory. Don't forget about that, because usually I bet it just doesn't even get done at all in the like length of the business.
Yeah.
How are you guys? I mean, I'm listening to all the work you and Patrick are doing. with AI. I've traded some tweets and stuff with Patrick. Just we're talking about this
Yeah.
overwhelm where it's like it does feel like,
Yeah.
wow, we're spending so much time building, customizing, and like in a month, it's you're just gonna be able to one shot it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the cognitive,
Uh,
the cognitive work
yeah.
through all that is,
I feel two things about this. One of them is there is this element that is because I've talked about Prometheus on our podcast a lot, like the idea of like an AI co-writer is the way I first framed it, but it's just like it is so drastically undersells what it is now. And that's what it was when it
yes,
started, but like now it is like it is an interactive tool with a custom built vibe coded, like we call it AJF OS, and now Prometheus is just like one little tool within that. Um, And so it is the promise to me what a lot of this stuff is, which is like the ability to basically democratize coding. Because Patrick's built AJFOS, I think 100% in Lovable, I think is what he's used to build it, and he knows zero. He's looked at 0 lines of code. He knows no code at all. He has just built this custom way. And the thing that's so valuable about that is that we are an agency that does things a particular way. So everything was in Notion before, and when you're working in Notion, you're taking a publicly available tool and then you're customizing it for your workflows. But it always has these things that were not quite built for you. But for us, we're like, well, now we can build the software to accomplish our exact specific work. And that is like the promise of this stuff.
yeah,
And the democratization of software is like we do a really specific thing. We do have domain expertise, and it's very hard for me to imagine ever one-shotting the entirety of it because the work changes and the work is so specific that it's like you could tell it build me a custom dashboard that and it would be like, okay, but what about this? And you get a lot of things wrong. There's almost no way to describe every possible detail of the thing until you're working in it and see. It's an iterative process like all software where it's like people have to work on it and they report bugs and feature requests, and that then becomes ways to make it your own. And so in that respect, it's so awesome and it's so encouraging and exciting. But I do feel the thing you're saying at the same time, which is like, it's also one of the reasons why I some of what you're saying is why I have been not very concerned about being first on a lot of this stuff, because the tools are getting so much better so fast that I'm like, I'm not bothered by the idea that I'm not going to be the earliest adopter of X tool, because that tool is going to be so much better in 6 months that right now it doesn't do enough for me and it requires a bunch of time and there's still bugs. It's not quite whatever. Whereas like in 6 months, it'll just like be perfect. And that's kind of the way that I have sort of approached this whole thing. So I think right now, the way we're going about it is the way that I think is best. And it's really Patrick doing it, like, which is like the place that we can create outsized value is by having our own kind of custom operating system for our work that makes it so that we just continue to find ways to smooth out all of the annoying parts of our work and then do the things that we do really, really well and create value for clients. And when I look at our actual client performance, is the other thing is like on the whole, our clients are doing awesome right now. They're doing really, really well. And I'm very confident in the work that we're delivering them. And therefore, I don't feel a big need to go change our processes and do a lot of other stuff. It's like, just keep going. They're growing at the pace that's good. They're producing the value that's going. Instead, build tools intentionally that allow us to keep doing that work at a high level. And then over time, we'll just kind of keep adding to it without this big rush to like be first or something like that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I'm thinking about it.
No, I think it's like you can't, the productivity gains and being first to productivity gains is not the race you want to be in.
No,
focus on solving,
yeah.
like delivering value, solving the business problem for your clients. And the thing with AI too, like productivity gains does not distribute. You gain a lot of optimizations, but like you still got to build an audience, bring customers in. Like that's the human component that you can't skip.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's when I've watched great agencies use this kind of stuff. When I look at CTC, like they did this with a lot of code and a lot of money and time, in terms of building custom software. But one of the things that's been core to their success, I know, has been Statless, their development of a software tool internally to help unify their work across a lot of different people by having a centralized way that work gets done. And what we're building is different than Statless in some ways, at least right now. I've seen Statless. Statless is more analytical, more database than what we've built so far. What we've built more is like workflow based, I would say, but it will get there. We'll add a bunch of analytical and kind of data stuff into the workflows, of course. But yeah, that's the thing that I think for me is like, I've watched that happen. And I think there is a thing for service businesses in particular that there's this ability to do that stuff that is just so valuable. And it will be a way that service businesses can create a lot more leverage and value for their clients. And I think that's probably for your business, for more staffing, as much as it's going to be for, it'll look really different for the two of us. But like, I think that's the right sort of approach.
Yeah. It's wild though. It's wild out there. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right, man. Gregg, I'm a huge fan of More. You guys are my longest running advertiser for a long time. I'm a huge fan of my Filipino team members. I have no plans of changing anything that we're doing on anything that I'm touching. I'm very grateful for you in particular. Grateful for the team. I find myself rooting for the Philippines in the Olympics. I'm fully I'm in. So it's just been such a gift in my life that I never saw coming, and so I appreciate it. I just want to commend it to other people listening or watching this. Gregg and his team care a lot about solving it and about getting you guys set up. You can hear Gregg is thinking about these things at the level of not just like, how do I get you a new hire, but like, how do we really set e-commerce brands up for success from somebody who knows how hard the game is. So
I appreciate you, man. You've had a dramatic impact on my life in a number of facets, and just so happens to be a knowledgeable guy, but a great human being. And so that's what's awesome. It comes through as your personal brand. Just a perspective on happiness, doing the right thing, living a good life, and that makes all of this that much sweeter. So we all
yeah. All right, next time we'll do the Survivor cast.
All right,
all right. Thank you. Go to morestaffing.co, morestaffing.co/AF. The link's in the show notes.
Awesome.
For that, morestaffing.co/AF.
Right.
And
appreciate you, bud.
Thanks. Thanks so much for watching or listening. When I do sponsored episodes, I really want to make it good content, and I just don't take on sponsors with whom I don't actually want to talk. So I'm always happy to do that. Morestaffing.co/AF is the place to go follow up with Gregg and his team. Like I said, I have a job search open right now where I'm adding more talent to AJF Growth right now. And so just a huge fan of what they're doing. Go check it out right now. Subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. Like I said, leave any comments you have. I'd love to interact with those. I read every comment. I try to respond to every single one of them. If you want to interact with me, it's actually the best place to do it. Maybe you can also go to ajfgrowth.com if you want to work with me and my team. I'm a huge believer in what we're doing right now. I think we're doing the best work I've ever done. Go fill out the intake form there. Tell me a little bit about your business. I'd love to hear about it, understand the context of it. Even if AJF Growth is not the right fit for you, even if it's not the right help for you, I might know someone who is. So I'm happy to always refer out if that is the case. ajfgrowth.com for everything I'm doing. Thanks so much. See you next time.